She called it helping. That is what my daughter kept saying the whole first year, that moving in was just temporary, just until they got back on their feet, just until Marcus found something steady. I said yes because she is my daughter, and you say yes to your children even when a quiet part of you already knows better. That was 3 years ago. The morning it finally happened, I was in my kitchen. Not a guest kitchen, not a shared kitchen, my kitchen, in the house I have owned for 22 years, the house where I raised my daughter alone after her father passed, the house where I repainted every cabinet myself, the summer I turned 54 because I wanted yellow, and nobody could tell me otherwise. I was standing at the counter making my coffee the way I always make it, slow and deliberate, the way mornings are supposed to go when you are 63 years old, and you have earned the right to move at your own pace. My son-in-law walked in and opened the refrigerator. He stood there for a long moment, door hanging open, cold air spilling out, and then he turned and looked at me the way you look at something that is in your way. "You're doing that again," he said. I looked at him. "Doing what?" "Taking up the whole counter. I need to use the counter." I looked down at my coffee maker, my mug, the small jar of creamer I keep on the left side near the window, because that is where I have always kept it. There was easily 2/3 of the counter empty on the other side of the sink. "There's plenty of room," I said, and turned back to my coffee. He made a sound. Not a word, a sound. The kind that is designed to let you know you are being tolerated. I want you to understand something about that moment. It was not the first time. It was not even close to the first time. It was simply the morning I finally let myself hear it clearly for what it was. My name is Dorothy, and I live in Savannah, Georgia, and I have never in my life been a woman who causes trouble. I say that not as a point of pride, but as a piece of context, because it matters for what I am about to tell you. I spent 31 years as a school administrator. I know how to smooth things over. I know how to find the diplomatic path. I know how to make the people around me comfortable, even when I am not. That skill served me well for a long time, and then it stopped serving me and started costing me instead. When my daughter called and told me she and Marcus were having a hard time, that his contracting business had slowed down, that their lease was ending, that they just needed a few months to stabilize, I did not hesitate. I told her to come. She is my only child. What else do you say? They arrived on a Saturday with 2 trucks and more furniture than my house could reasonably hold. Marcus decided, without asking, that the armchair I kept by the front window would need to go to the garage to make room for their sectional. I moved the armchair. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it did not matter. The few months became 6. 6 became 12. 12 became 3 years, and in 3 years Marcus had never once offered to pay rent, never once offered to cover utilities, never once sat down with me and said, "Dorothy, how can we make this easier for you?" He had, however, developed a detailed set of opinions about how my house should be run. He did not like the smell of the candles I burned in the evenings. He thought the television in the living room was positioned wrong. He rearranged the tools in my garage and told me later, as if reporting good news, that he had organized everything and I would thank him for it. When I had my friend Gloria over for dinner one Thursday, he came downstairs at 8 o'clock, stood in the doorway of my own dining room, and said in front of Gloria that they had work in the morning and would appreciate it if we kept it down. Gloria looked at me across the table. I looked at my plate. I never invited her back after that. I told myself it was just easier. My daughter's name is Renee, and I want to be careful about how I talk about her because she is still my daughter, and I still love her with the whole of my heart. But love does not require me to be dishonest about what happened. And what happened is that somewhere in those 3 years, Renee stopped seeing me as her mother in her house and started seeing me as a complication in her husband's house. It happened so gradually that I almost did not notice. A sentence here. a look there. The way she would tilt slightly toward him when I said something he disagreed with, not openly, not dramatically, just tilting. Like a plant finding the light, only the light was his approval, and the shadow was me. I noticed. I chose not to say anything. I told myself that was love. The morning at the counter, I finished making my coffee, and I took it to the small table by the back window the way I always do, and I sat down, and I looked out at the yard that I have tended for 22 years, the gardenias along the fence, that I planted the spring after my husband died, because I needed something alive to take care of, and I thought, quietly, without drama, without tears, this has gone on long enough. I did not say it out loud. I just thought it. The way you think something when it has finally become undeniable. What I did not do was confront Marcus. I want to be clear about that, because I think people expect a certain kind of story, the argument, the raised voices, the moment someone finally says all the things they have been holding back. That is not what happened. I have seen enough of life to know that those moments feel satisfying and accomplish very little. What I did instead was call my friend Patricia, who had retired 2 years ago from a 30-year career in property law. I called her on a Tuesday. I told her everything. I told her about the 3 years and the unpaid expenses and the armchair in the garage and Gloria and the way Marcus had started speaking to me in my own kitchen as if I were a tenant who had fallen behind. Patricia listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I have always valued about her, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Dorothy, do you know what an informal occupancy situation is?" I told her I did not. She explained it to me. She explained what my rights were as the homeowner. She explained what their position was legally, as occupants with no lease, no rental agreement, no documented arrangement of any kind. She explained what proper notice looked like. She explained that none of this required a single raised voice. When I hung up the phone, I sat at my back table for a long time. I looked at the gardenias. I thought about my husband, who used to say that the quietest decisions are usually the most permanent ones. Then I called Patricia back and told her I was ready to move forward. The papers were formal. Patricia was thorough. The notice gave 30 days, which is what the law required, and it was delivered on a Wednesday morning by a man in a dark suit who rang the front doorbell at 9:15. I know the exact time because I was parked 2 streets over, in my car, with a cup of coffee from the gas station that was not very good, and I had checked the clock when I left the house that morning the way you check things when you are trying to stay calm. I had not told Renee it was coming. I have thought about that decision many times since. Whether it was right, whether I should have warned her, prepared her, given her the chance to come to me first. But here is what I keep coming back to. I had given her 3 years of chances. I had given her the chance every time I moved out of the way and said nothing. Every time I did not invite Gloria back. Every time I put my own comfort last in my own home. She had those chances, and she had tilted toward Marcus every time, and I had finally run out of ways to wait for her to turn back around. My phone rang 40 minutes after I had parked. It was Renee. I did not answer. It rang again. I did not answer. Then a text. "Mom, what is this? Call me right now." I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and finished my coffee. She came to my sister's house that evening, which is where I was staying. I had packed a bag 4 days earlier and put it in my car without telling anyone. I had done it calmly, the way you pack for a planned trip, taking what I needed and leaving everything else exactly in place. Renee sat across from me at my sister's kitchen table and she cried. Real tears, I am not suggesting otherwise. She said she had not known it was this serious. She said she did not realize how Marcus had been acting. She said she thought I was fine, that I would have said something if I was not fine. I let her finish. I did not say. I tried to say something many times, in many small ways, and you tilted toward him every time. I did not say it because it would not have helped. I simply said, "The notice is legal and it stands. You have 30 days. I hope you'll use the time to find somewhere comfortable." She looked at me like I had become someone she did not recognize. Maybe I had. Or maybe she was finally seeing me clearly for the first time. There is a particular kind of guilt that comes with doing something you have every right to do. I want to talk about that because I think it is the part most people do not say out loud, and I believe in saying the things people do not say out loud. I felt it every day of those 30 days. I stayed at my sister's house and I slept in her guest room, and I was grateful for the space. But I also woke up at 2 and 3 in the morning thinking about Renee's face at that kitchen table, thinking about whether I had failed her somehow, whether a better mother would have handled all of this differently, earlier, more gracefully, in some way that avoided anyone sitting across a table crying. I talked to Patricia about it. I talked to my sister about it. I talked to my pastor about it on a Sunday when I could not stop turning it over in my mind. And here is what I finally arrived at. Not because anyone told me, but because I sat with it long enough to hear it myself. Setting a boundary is not the same thing as causing harm. Protecting your home is not the same thing as abandoning your child. There is a version of love that absorbs everything, never pushes back, never claims space, and calls that selflessness. I lived that version for 3 years. It did not help Renee. It did not help Marcus. It did not help me. All it did was teach everyone involved that the arrangement had no limits, and things without limits will always expand until something breaks. The boundary was not the breaking. The boundary was the thing that stopped the breaking. They were out in 26 days. My sister drove me back to the house on a Thursday afternoon, and I walked through each room the way you walk through a place you have been away from, slowly, reacquainting. Someone had cleaned the kitchen before they left. I do not know if that was Renee, or if it was her way of saying something without words. I chose to take it as the latter. The armchair was still in the garage. I carried it back to the front window myself, one end at a time, the way you move something when there is no one to help you and you are not willing to wait. I made coffee. I sat down. The gardenias outside were coming into their second bloom of the season, white and heavy and fragrant through the window. I opened an inch to let the evening air in. The house was quiet, in the way that a house is quiet when it belongs to you again. Renee and I did not speak for 6 weeks after they moved out. That was her choice, not mine. I had told her at my sister's kitchen table that I would always be her mother and that door would always be open, but I also could not chase her. Chasing was part of what had gotten me here. She called on a Sunday morning. She was at her own place by then, a rental apartment across town, just hers and Marcus's. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She said she understood now, or was starting to. She said Marcus had said some things when the papers arrived that she could not unhear. She did not tell me what the things were. I did not ask. Some information is yours to carry, and some of it you can lay down, and I have gotten better at knowing the difference. We talk now. It is not what it was, but what it was not actually good, and I think we are both still learning that the relationship we are building now, carefully, with honesty this time, might end up being better than what came before it. I am willing to find out. That is enough for right now. I am 63 years old. I raised a child alone. I ran a school for 11 years. I planted gardenias in grief and watched them come back every spring and took that as evidence of something, though I could not always say what. I have made many mistakes, and I have recovered from most of them, but the mistake I made for those 3 years, the one where I confused endurance with love and silence with grace. That one cost me something I am still calculating. What I want to tell you, if you are somewhere in the middle of a version of this story, if you are the one making yourself smaller in a space that belongs to you, if you are the one convincing yourself that keeping the peace is the same thing as having peace is this, you already know. Whatever the quiet part of you has been saying, you already know. You do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be loud. You do not have to perform your anger or your hurt for anyone. You are allowed to be still and certain and simply, quietly done. You are allowed to take your home back. You are allowed to put the chair back in the window. You are allowed to make your coffee exactly the way you have always made it, at the counter that belongs to you, in the house that is yours, in the morning that is. Nobody's to take. You are allowed to choose peace, and then you are allowed to actually live in it.